Dang. Talking about from the
We're
topic of today's
live.
show?
We're live.
Oh, okay. Well, you didn't count me in. Well, greetings everybody. Welcome to another installment of the Hilly Brothers podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Brandon Jones, and I'm joined by Sam Simmons. No legendary, no big status today. I'm just gonna call you Sam Simmons. How you doing today, Sam?
Oh man, I don't get no title today. You go from one extreme to the other.
uh
It sounds like you just can't make me happy, huh?
it's called codependency, man. Like, we're in this dynamic. I don't know what you want me to do, bro.
Oh shoot, it's like one of them things that you don't know who's gonna show up today. You know, yeah, which is a bizarre experience in itself. Uh, so what's up with you?
How much, man? It's been a very interesting week. We had the verdict, come through. We had Dante Wright's funeral. Um, people just been responding to all the stuff that's happening. But it's been a emotionally, I would say the last 2 weeks have been a very interesting emotional state for many of us. And being one of those people that gets called upon during these difficult times, it's been interesting to just see how people have been responding. Um, and also checking in on my own care, which is also fascinating as well, because we don't always have people checking on us. We always are the people that they want to
Oh
check.
my God!
So,
Don't even bring that up. You know,
so yeah.
that's a conversation I'm I'm going to have, I think, this week with a group of activists and that kind of stuff about that piece. You
Hmm.
know, that piece around being the one that folks call on because of your reliability, right?
Right.
I mean,
Hmm.
which is unfortunate that people don't see enough reliability in their lives, that when they see it, they just kind of use it up
Right.
if you let them,
Right.
right? You know, and and depending on where you at emotionally, it makes you feel, if you didn't feel, important already, it could consume you to a way where you don't set limits,
Hmm.
right? Or if it fills that void, that trauma void of that you grew up with,
Right.
not just not feeling important, uh, is one of them, but the other thing is people taking you seriously, and as a person, as a black person, feeling important to fill that trauma void, right? And
Mm.
so you get consumed with um, and that whole codependency we grew up with in our community, right?
Right.
Where it's better to serve others than to be served,
Mm.
right?
Hmm.
And not having that balance, right? And there's some, emotional and sometimes financial kudos you get from that as well. You're the voice,
Right.
and you might end up on TV, and all this other kind of stuff, and that stuff is enticing when you've been diminished, either
Right.
as a black person in general or diminished in your own community,
Right.
right? You know, ha ha ha, I'm important and you ain't, because I could get caught. I could easily get caught up in that because I am the result of being in the black community and couldn't understand um, the mistreatment I was receiving from other black people in my community,
Mm.
right?
Hmm.
And especially when um, I meant no harm,
Right.
right? I was truly non-violent in a violent environment uh, probably to a flaw of,
Right.
in my own, in terms of my own care, right? And um, growing up and not really a fighter, right? Realizing that we might have had a little bit more than the kids growing up around us, and willing to give up what I had for them, right? Well, because you felt sorry. Yeah, I did. That's the only emotion I knew how I had as a kid. It's
Right.
like you have these emotions. Oh, you just felt sorry for folks. Blah blah. Well, that's the only emotion I had as a kid. So you're gonna beat me up with that? Okay, fine. But I knew that I had more than them other kids, and if they, and I would give stuff even without them asking. But they didn't have to beat me up.
Right.
They didn't have to beat me up to get the cookies we had.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna get beat up from my parents for giving the damn cookies. Okay, you know, and did get beat up. Got beat up twice. I give you the damn cookies, you beat me up, and then my parents said, "Why are you giving them kids your damn cookies?" And then I get beat up. Don't you know we had to pay money to get them cookies?
Mm.
And then people want to know why I stayed in my bedroom and why I have no problem being in the basement right now.
Mm.
Okay, and doing this trauma work allowed me to let go of that anger I had towards those kids and in general towards black people.
Mm.
Right? It's like, what is this noise?
Yeah.
And what I realized in there's this kind of piece I've been sharing lately. I'm trying to work it out and get some nuance with it, and I think I'm gonna share it this week. Is this whole thing about reflective trauma?
Mm.
Where when I look at you doing well, it makes me feel bad about me. So what the result of that is I attack you, right?
Mm.
Right? And at times it happens so easily that we don't even see it that way, right?
Mm.
You know, um, it's like there's a whole question why black people hate on other black people and care about what other black people got, and then then we use white logic, the crabs in the barrel, all that other kind of stuff, and
Right.
then we start talking about the setup in terms of um, yeah, and so and it even shows up in our profession, right? It shows
Exactly.
up in terms of even shows up in our leadership. Who can
Yep.
outdo who,
Yep.
right? Um, this all or nothing, which is another trauma response, by the way,
Right.
right? All or nothing, and a lot of answers to things are this and that, and maybe a little bit of both, right?
Right.
And when you're kind of stuck in that need to have this all or nothing to feel safe, because I think that's a safety measure. You're all right or you're all wrong, and then you
Right.
don't have to sort through the nuance. You don't have to deal with the angst and the pain of sorting through the nuance of questions and understanding. And I know I'm kind of, how did you get me started on this?
No, go
But
ahead. You're right into the topic. Let's go for
you
it.
know, but it's hard to sit back and watch these pieces around how we respond to each other,
Yes.
right? And how our trauma has has affected how we respond to each other, our codependency, our inability to set limits, our inability to set limits without anger,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
Set limits without anger. So you don't agree with me, okay? And I've seen folks who start getting all upset. I do a
Mm.
presentation. I'm not. My thing is, if I'm doing a presentation, right?
Right.
And your response is, I ain't like that, then I ain't talking about you. And so why are you fussing with me about what I just said if I ain't talking about you, right?
Yeah.
Because what I'm saying does exist. And you might even agree with that. Well, I disagree. Well, okay, fine. Well, how do you disagree? Well, tell me. Break it down.
Hmm.
I might learn something. Well. No, 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 no. Tell me why you disagree, and we might have a conversation.
Right. Right.
Yeah. No, I just no, 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 no. That ain't good enough. That ain't not good enough. You done called me out. I'm the speaker. You done stood up, right? To
Hmm.
call me out in front of all these people. And the one that tickles me the most is the one who called me out and all the in front of when I'm speaking all in front of a bunch of white folks. And see, personally, that don't even bother me at the level it bother other folks, right? It's just I
Right.
just laugh. It's like, okay, so you done stood up and told me whatever, or the one to get me, in this, when they stand up and try to, because right now, if I'm the speaker, I'm the one that the camera's on, or I'm the one who's in front, and you get this person that stands up and say they disagree with me, right?
Right.
And does this long lecture of their own, repeating some of what I said, not all of what I said back, and trying to sound important. And it's like, what is your point?
Right. Yeah.
And everybody look around, it's like, what is the point? Now the problem would be, because the problem would be, and I've seen this happen too,
Hmm.
right? The problem would be is if I don't manage my emotions in that moment to snap off on that person in the audience,
Yeah.
right? That's when the problem, because I don't have no control over dude.
Right.
The only control I got is the person passing around the mic. You
Yep.
know, and I do this. It's like
Mhm.
yeah. But my response, I don't care what they said. They could say he's a dumbass nigga,
Mhm.
from Minnesota. But the most important thing is my response to his response to me being in his voice a dumbass nigga from Minnesota.
Yeah.
Okay, because
Right.
if I act out in some kind of emotionally, and I'm gonna say it irrationally way. People say, well, emotions you can act there. No, well, no, there's a place and time,
Right.
right? And you can still, I'm still emotional. There's a way to deal with that.
Right.
Okay. And what's so funny, what I find, and see, I enjoy this because after I done learned it and all like this, it just
Mhm.
makes me feel so good. And I look at dude and says, well, thank you for your opinion, sir.
Yep.
And
You
the
can
dude
fall
looks
back.
around and like, and sits down because it's like, uh-oh,
Mhm.
you know. And after I get done, you know what I hear? I really like the way you responded to that. You
Yeah.
know, because I ain't had
Mhm.
nothing to prove. I ain't got
Right.
nothing to prove. I believe what I believe. Now again, it could not be it because right is only as good as the person giving the information. But if I'm proven wrong with some legitimate information, and if I'm proven wrong, and the legitimate can be evaluated too. But just want to profile and showboat and all this other kind of stuff, man. Because if you look at that kind of stuff, is that nobody would remember what dude said in the audience. All you would hear about is my response to dude.
Mhm. Right.
And depending on the audience, you might read about that,
Right.
right, in the news. You know, responding to heckler in the audience is like,
Yeah.
Mr. Trauma. Now all of a sudden I'm Mr. Trauma. You don't give me no idea. Now I'm Mr. Trauma. Mr. Trauma. The respond to heckler in the audience. Man, please. And because the thing is, see, I have learned in doing this trauma work, the internal trauma work, because we got the internal trauma work and we got the external trauma work. What I'm saying is, we got this constant battle with systems that we are seeing evolve as we go. I mean, that's a given. We are part and partial of that system, because unfortunately, the system has been built on the back of Black people's labor.
Mm. Right.
So we are a part of the system,
Right.
like it or not. And Native Americans are part of the system in their own way, like it or not. Even though they're I think they're a little bit more comfortable. Maybe it's not as far as they'd like to be talking about the internal result of being part of that American history.
Right.
Really calling out. We are human beings and we have been traumatized by this experience, and we need to address the trauma within our community and the results of that with some compassion. And that trauma looks like domestic violence. That trauma looks like alcoholism. That trauma looks like mental illness. That trauma looks like diminished self-esteem in terms of our men and our women, and they have done bad things with that trauma, and we need to hold them accountable but show them compassion at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
I appreciate that.
Right.
But again, they still have their culture intact,
Right.
which is an important piece.
Right.
But in terms of and this doesn't make me right for anybody who's listening. I'm just saying my observation is so often, and I can understand why we want to address one or the other,
Right.
and we really don't have. If we want to move forward in this existence, we don't have that luxury
Mm.
to do one or the other.
Mm.
We got to do both ends.
Break that down a little bit. It's like that might go over some folks' head.
Oh my goodness. What I'm saying is we got a lot of good people out here fighting the struggle against the systems. And I'm not saying everybody though, but not everybody can fight the system,
Right.
right? People are just trying to fight day to day.
Right.
I got clients, when you start talking about the Chauvin case, they're like, why are we talking about that?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to, be able to get to my job every day.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, it's important, but it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I've seen folks get upset with folks because what do you mean? No. That's where that person's at.
Right.
And I can work with that. But not everybody are capable of fighting systems.
Right.
Right? Not everybody's capable of, and that's one of the battles. Right? But now we got the internal battle. How do we really get a core in terms of how we treat each other? How do we get a handle on how we manage? I don't like to use the word manage each other, but at least manage our emotions enough that we are allowed to care for.
Right.
And allowed to hold people in our community accountable.
Mm-hmm.
In many different ways. Accountable. We see that all or nothing response. Uh, 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 is interesting because sometimes when you start talking about holding people accountable, all they hear you talking about is punishing folks.
Right.
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 And I believe in compassion and accountability. Right. And so uh, so it's a both and it's hard to do a both and when you can only do one or the other,
Right.
and we accuse systems of only want to hold us accountable. I know black folks who are harder on other black folks than even white folks are. I mean, I had white folks report on black folks. Man, Mr. Simmons, our staff person so and so are really hard on our kids,
Mm-hmm.
right? So how do we show ourselves the compassion and accountability that we deserve from systems? How do we do that?
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
How do we do that? We don't even know. We don't even want to recognize or accept how deeply harmed and traumatized the results of that trauma within our community and how it shows up with each other,
Mm-hmm.
to the point where when I started doing this work, all people want to tell me about inside the community, why are you talking about this? We resilient people. So how,
Right.
you know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't deny resiliency, but the issue around resiliency is about continuing. No matter what comes at you, you still are there, right?
Right.
But
Right.
how long are you just going to be resilient when you ain't doing the work in terms of healing?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
You ain't doing the work of healing.
Right.
And when you're looking at certain situations, if you really want to get to the core of things, you got to look at the full core,
Mm-hmm.
right? We we don't have the luxury to do to each other the what we have been done to us. Pick and choose how we want to look at a picture.
Mm.
We don't have that luxury. We got to deal with that ingrained pain that has conditioned us to look at ourselves in negative ways. When they start talking about stereotypes, sometimes when I think about stereotypes sometimes, at least with my observation, is harder on the people who are being stereotyped.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And because if you're not trying to not be the stereotype, that means you might be trying not to be who you are,
Right.
which is another kind of trauma, right? It's like
Right.
it's like being stereotyped as an angry black man. You know how I diffuse that? I'm an angry black man, so if you don't want to hire me, so don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Now you want to have a conversation about I'm an angry black man? Well, oh no, I'll have a conversation with you about what where my anger's at.
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk about the emotions behind my anger. But the most important thing that you should be concerned about is me managing that anger by the fact that I acknowledge that it happens. So you want to set me up not to acknowledge that it happens. So when I can't contain it no longer, I lose my damn mind,
Mm.
either on you or on my own.
Mm-hmm.
So that whole trying to look a certain way, we've been doing that ever since slavery's been over, worrying about what white folks think. Why do we make sure we dress so well when we leave the house? They all started with trying to outdo the stereotype of being lazy, syphilis, and raggedy. You gotta look a certain way, gotta drive a certain way, almost like a motion picture, but you get behind the motion, it's like the Oz. You look behind the curtain and it's all, oh man, there's a whole bunch of bullshit behind there.
Oh man, yeah.
you know and so it you know And if the lesson from the Wizard of Oz was about being real, about appreciating what you got, and the thing is it's easy to appreciate what you got if you can get real about what's going on with you. How do
Right.
you fight to both the battles? People who do this work, how do you do that when you got people in your community attacking you for doing the work the way you do your work? Or you
Right.
got people in your own community that will take you out. So how do I when I talk to young people and see young people they're not as corrupted as us old people, right?
Mm.
At least you hope so. They're not, because there's some little corrupted folks out there, emotionally educated, highly educated, precious young people that will say some of the most ignorant stuff and think they smart.
Yeah. They're usually attached to some of the older people too. I don't know if you've noticed that trend, but
Well, now that you bring it up, one that I'm thinking about is absolutely true. Yeah, absolutely true. But But again, where am I going with this? I mean, it's like, oh, where's this old Negro going with this? Well, the bottom line is, mm, I've always believed if we really want to shake up things, if we could get a better handle, not that we should give up our battle against systems. I'm not saying that. Like I said, there's good people, great people out there doing that, and I support them any way that I can. But that internal stuff,
uh-huh.
we cannot ignore that internal stuff. And when I was getting ready to say about young people, when you got young people says, Mr. Simmons, you know, yeah, I'm concerned about police and their response, but I'm also scared, concerned about Pookie and them.
Mm. Mm.
And not only Pookie and them, I'm also concerned about this stepdaddy that keeps visiting my house.
Mm.
And I'm also, and as one young person said, Mr. Simmons, I don't think the community really care about us.
Mm.
They want to act like they care, talk a good game, but do they really? And so that we as human beings, I don't understand why we don't really put a handle on why is it after 400 years we think that we not would not be affected by the traumatic experience we call living in America,
Mm-hmm.
because we're human beings. When
Mm-hmm.
we deny our trauma and the effects of our trauma, we deny our humanity, and we always come talking about they don't treat us like human beings. Well, the thing is we cannot deny, we are not animals,
Right.
and so that trauma that we have absorbed, that we if we continue to ignore, will consume us even greater. We have to deal with that and the other, right? And one of the things about I love about Joy DeGruy, she really, she talks about this with passion for our community. She loves our community. I've sat down. I had the fine opportunity to be able to have lunch with her and sit down and talk with her, right?
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things I realized also is she cares about our community, but she has learned over time to take care of herself.
Right.
You can't do that. You can't do this long and well if you forget that point.
Right.
You can't. And that might mean to step away from my people for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Set
Yep.
some limits.
Yep.
Setting limits don't mean I don't love you. Okay? But she talks about this way of adapting to destructive occurrences. We adapt to them. The
Right.
problem is that some of the behaviors we use to adapt to them, when you use them too long and bring them into modern day, they become self-destructive.
Right. Right.
And it becomes more self-destructive if you deny it
Mm.
and you don't address it.
Mm.
It's like one of the conferences you and me did together. It was a conference for women, professional women,
Mm-hmm.
and we remember that we was on the panel.
Yeah,
Remember
I
that?
can't forget. Yeah.
And some days I just don't know how to act. Well, most days, according to other people. And we were talking about trauma and community trauma, and I think it was either about self-care or whatever. But we got a question from the audience. Young, professional black woman, and she said, "Mr. Simmons," because I think I said something about codependency being one of the biggest issues within our community. I think what it was.
Right.
And she says, "Mr. Simmons, how do I deal with family?" Well, I said, "What do you mean, how do you deal with family?" She says, "I moved to Minnesota. I think she was from Chicago or St. Louis or something like that. You know, to really, if I'm honest, to get away from my family."
Mm-hmm.
She says, "I'm the oldest girl in the family, you know, and I was taking on too much of the issues of my family. And since and so I'm getting I'm getting stable, getting my my place together, got a decent job, getting legs under me, and my mother who got issues. She keeps calling me and telling me about my brother and all these other stuff. And in the past, I would respond, and and it then it just didn't work for me."
Right.
And she says, "How do I deal with my mother?"
Mm.
I said, "Tell her no."
Right.
Oh my God.
The look on her face.
The look on her face, it was priceless. But the response of the room was
Oh
even more
yeah.
responsive.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
sucked the air out of the room. Oh my God. Did he really
Yeah.
tell her to say no to her mama?
Yeah.
Yes, I did. And the young lady looked at me, and the first response was shock. Then she smiled. She says, "That's what I needed to
Yep.
hear.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you." And sat down.
Mm-hmm.
After that moment, the whole little panel changed, and like
They was ready to get us up out of there. There's one a few men up in that joint. It was us and the caterers. That was it. They was ready to get us out of there, man. Woo! That was our red pill moment right there. Boy, that was interesting.
And I understand when we start talking about this loyalty crap in terms of
Right.
the black community. And I did say crap for anybody who heard me. Okay. And the reason I say it like that is when I'm dealing with little gang members, the new version of gang members,
Yeah.
and they start talking about, man, we keep it real, we loyal. I said, well, first of all, what do you mean by loyal?
Right.
What do you mean by that? Loyal to death? Loyal to the point where you don't snitch and go to jail?
Mm-hmm.
How many of your partners that went to jail and snitched as soon as they got in jail? All of them. So what does loyalty mean? What does it mean? What are you holding on to?
Right.
And sometimes we hold on to these crazy ideals just to prove that we're right. We were so worried about being seen as wrong, we'll hold on to stupid ideals that we know are unhealthy.
Right.
Now we're imitating white folks. White folks are still holding on to ideals, thinking that if I give up that, even though they can feel that the ideals are messed up, but hold on to them because being right and not understanding that your grandparents and all those folks were off the mark.
Right.
And so we gotta we you know, because again, my work is I believe if we can get a handle on the response of this trauma internally, will put us even a better position to fight systems.
Right.
Not the only, but a better position to fight systems. So what was you know, we done went almost what half through the show, man, and you didn't tell me what we supposed to be talking about,
No,
man.
well, you kind of dove into it because what we were going to talk about is the value of Black life, but it really does start internally with us and us valuing each other. Or first started valuing ourselves and then valuing each other. And part of the conversation, I want to just talk about how we've been responding to a lot of these police murders and shootings that have been taking place. But also in the midst of all that, there's been a lot of gun violence. It's
Right.
like gun violence and community violence and carjackings have just skyrocketed all across the country, and we don't have the same level of outrage. Um, and it's kind of messed up. Like it hit me because I don't know if you heard about the 7-year-old girl that got shot who was at the drive-through at McDonald's in Chicago. But it's like we just keep having these types of things happen over and over and over, and I'm
Whoa,
just
whoa,
like,
whoa, 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 whoa.
yep,
7-year-old girl got shot in the drive-through at McDonald's.
yes,
Was they shooting? Was they
they were
shooting at the
shooting.
adults in the car?
Correct. They were shooting at her father because her father he's click affiliated, and he had made a video. This is what they're saying is the reason for the shooting, the motive. He had made a video where he was pissing on the grave of one of the ops, so one of the other click members. So this young 7-year-old girl, he's being a dad, even though he's involved in click activity. He's being a father. He takes his daughter to McDonald's. She ends up getting killed in Chicago.
Okay.
And again, these situations just keep happening. And I'm like, man, at some point, when do we value Black life enough to do something internally in our community? And when do we have the same level of outrage? We talk about these disparities and stuff that we have all the time. And it's just like, when are we collectively going to really take a different step to dealing with this? Just like we took a different step dealing with police shootings. Like it was a force. People cared. And it made me think, do we care more when is Black life valued more when a white person takes it versus another Black person? Like that's a legit question.
Well, some people don't think it is. You know that, right? I don't. I think sometimes I think people don't think it is because they think uh, admitting to that diminishes the other.
Correct.
Right.
It's a
And
both end.
it is a both and.
Yes.
Right. It's definitely a both and. And the ironic part, you know what's so sad about this? What we're talking about? I'll have this conversation with all kind of people behind the scenes.
Yep.
And them same people will say something
They're talking about
totally
it
different
publicly.
in public.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to bring it up because I've had these conversations too.
I mean, it's like, to the point where people are in tears,
Yeah,
right?
it's painful.
And it is. That's what healing is painful.
Yeah.
But healing don't occur without truth,
Right.
right? Like the truth that you know we might feel that systems don't care nothing about our people, and that might be true.
Right.
We know there is people in the systems that don't. System ain't set up for us. It's set up to keep us in order, right? Keep us in place. We know that. And all that. But we also need to deal with the fact as a result of that, How has that affect how we deal with each other? Now,
Exactly.
and the thing is, we talk about poverty, right? We always want to talk about poverty and housing and those kind of things, right? That gets to be nuanced for me,
Right.
right? Because I know, we talk about resiliency. I remember back in the day when poverty did not equal killing each other.
Mm.
Now, some people would say, well, that's when we had communities, right?
Correct.
But we have black communities in certain cities,
Correct.
right? Um, I say it's all of the above, but I also say that we haven't taken time to heal.
Bingo. And we also need to value ourselves as human.
Yeah,
Like
and part of that is
we have
healing.
you exactly. That's the whole point of this conversation is because just like what you started with earlier, that's why I said it's connected because we've accepted that devaluation of ourselves. And we've gotten to a point where it's getting passed down intergenerationally where you have these young youth they're not growing up in environments that value themselves.
Right.
They don't see the impacts. They don't see any positive impacts from what they put into the world. They just see the negative ones. So the self-esteem is just low. And so when we have these murders, it's just like it is what it is. And people just keep moving. And I'm like, damn, we should be sounding an alarm at this point. Like this stuff has to stop at some point.
Yeah, and what I call it is that you when you continually roll with the punches
Right.
without slowing down and dealing with the punches
Right.
and taking a look at the effects on you, not them, but on you,
Right.
and really take a look at the pain, the results of the pain, and how that results affect trauma affects how we parent, how we function in the world.
Right.
Yeah, it is traumatic to be able to know that you have to talk to your children about how to deal with policing, right?
Right.
And then and then people who talk about who want to defend policing. The ironic part is not being able to trust policing contributes to violence in the community as well. It's all, and that's why we got to talk about both ends.
Right.
So think about how helpless you feel when you are living in a neighborhood and you're terrorized by the violence in your community. Who the hell do you call?
Bingo. Bingo.
Right? When I talk to young men and I talk about what's going on in the community, them cats are talking about, man, I just stay in the house.
Yeah.
You know, I just stay in the house. I got one cat who just got shot recently. Smart young man,
Mm-hmm.
but believes he believes he has to stay. He is there something about him that's got to keep one toe in that world, right?
Yeah.
You know, just to prove a point. Well, why are you? What in that world is contributing to what you are currently doing?
Mm-hmm.
That next move. Oh man, no, no, no. What is it in that world you are missing if you let it go?
Right.
But and in some cases, it contributes to his self worth.
It
Unfortunately,
does. It does. The three. It's what I call the universal goal. Everybody does this in their own way, and when you see young guys like the guy you're talking about, who's keeping that one toe in, it's because he's getting security, significance, and belonging. That's why he keeps it. And if he takes his toe out, Where else is he going to get it from?
Right.
He's comfortable there. His life means something there. He's got a nickname. He might even have some clout and some rank, and he has a group. And at some point, we have to be able to provide opportunities for these young folks that get those three things in constructive activity. Otherwise, we're going to see more of what we see going on.
Yeah, and I don't have no angels in my group. Trust me. But still, when you got 15 enrolled, I
Man.
had to extend it a couple, so 17 enrolled, and you get out of that 17, 11 and 12, around 11 and 12 that shows up each week,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And you can see improvement by the way they talk about things, right? Their thought
Mm.
process, got their brains working, got them looking at things bigger as a both and, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and looking at things not from a victim position. When you only look at things from a victim position, you will be treated like a victim, even by people who like you,
Right.
right?
Right.
Being able to find things that you can do within your own environment is very, very important. But a lot of us want to look at the big things, right? Because if you look at the big things, the overwhelming things, and if you don't make it, well, that's the way it was, man. That's the way the system
Mm.
is. But the small things, like even thinking about how I have children,
Mm.
even thinking about how it is, how am I going to take the responsibility of improving my co-parenting skills for the betterment of my children and not necessarily for the betterment of my own self-esteem,
Right.
right?
Yep.
Because if you're talking to me, well, man, she won't let me talk to the kids and all this. And so, well, how do you treat her? The
Right.
hell with her. Well, okay, well, you don't answer that question.
Right.
Well, she treat me like shit. Yeah, but she ain't here in front of me.
Mm.
You can't do nothing. You can't, because the only way you can have any effect on her is have an effect on yourself. Have an effect on yourself. So we ain't gonna have no conversation about her. And I'm not saying she's good or bad or perfect or whatever. We are not gonna have a conversation about her. We're gonna have a conversation about you.
Right.
So when you call her and ask, can you see your kids, and she say no, what's your response? Well, I cuss her out. Well, okay, that takes care of next time. Okay. And then what they find over time, if they manage their stuff over time, in most cases, not all, because thing is like if you manage your emotions, you might manage the situation, right? You might not necessarily win, but you can manage it in a way where you ain't making it worse,
Right.
right? And over time, it's like, I said no to him, and he says, "Well, okay, I'll try again next week." They notice that over time.
Mm.
It's like, whoa, what's that all about? You know? And when they ask you for something to help with the kids, you don't give them that over. Well, you didn't let me see the kids, so I ain't gonna do it. No, because remember, it's about the children.
Right.
It's about the children. And you'll hear individuals feel less like victims. You don't hear victims no more.
Right.
All of a sudden, you start hearing these men talking about, "Well, I tried this last week, Mr. Simmons, and believe it or not, it worked. It ain't perfect, but you know, I'm seeing the kids more often, and you know, I wish I could, you know, take them on a vacation or something, right? But but again, the other thing I think contributes to that is when we start talking about the young people in this community, when you got so much death around you, How do you feel like you have patience enough to make that stuff work? You think you always living your life like you don't have much time, and you don't even realize it, which gets you stuck in what we call survival stress management.
Right.
In the moment, whatever feels good in the moment, without any regard of consequences. There are consequences in the in good situations, and there could be consequences in bad situations. But when you make decisions without no regard of the consequences and then want to start crying afterwards,
Right.
that's a problem. So
Absolutely.
I'm off the mark again. We ain't
Well,
getting. I ain't seeing no comments this week. Nobody love me no more.
the topic's too heavy. You know, I don't think you're off the mark because that survival stress management piece again, when you're able to deregulate, when you're able to kind of de-escalate and regulate yourself, you process your thinking a lot better. And when you're dealing with other black folks, that's something that you need because we are very quick to just jump jump off the ledge when it involves another black person. That anti-blackness is so strong. And part of it is just internally just not processing things very well. And also feeding into the propaganda that we are bad people.
Right.
And yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, it reminds me of what I said earlier about stereotypes having more of an effect on the people that the stereotypes are about. You know, that's all. Well, I think we look like we lost Mr. Brandon, but it's 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 a tough piece uh, in terms of dealing with internal trauma, in terms of the way that this whole trauma experience of being black in America has affected how we deal with each other, how we deal with each other as men and women, how do we deal with each other, how it has affected our relationships, and 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 how do we figure out a way to deal with, as one a person said to me after one of my presentations. She says, "Well, Mr. Simmons, how does your community heal at the same time still under attack?" Which is a very important question. We don't have the privilege of not doing both, and I can't say that enough. We don't have the privilege of not doing both. And then he came back.
I don't know what happened, man. My whole computer just literally shut down. My screen went green. It was really weird. But
Oh, but see you. Uh oh. That is, they might be watching you, man. I gotta. The man by me. Somebody watching you. You done pissed off somebody, so I gotta leave you alone.
hey, as long as they don't hack my accounts, I'm good. Just
Hey, hey,
you wanna
how
mute
you
my
know
voice?
they?
That's okay.
Wait. How you know they? You said your screen went green?
It went green. Yeah, it went
Yeah,
green.
well,
I don't know.
yeah,
I just restarted. I have a nice new Mac, high. All the bells and whistles on it. So I don't know what just happened. Anyway, back to trauma.
that's trauma. I'm scared
That
now.
is trauma. Oh man, yeah. The society managers. My voice ain't that big. My voice ain't that big. Not yet. So I shouldn't be. They
Oh,
shouldn't be watching me. But I
I don't.
I haven't. Hey man. Like hey. I haven't gotten an Oprah interview, brother.
Hey, is that the only way you can be big? Is if you've been on Oprah?
Hey, if
Huh?
you're from Minnesota, yeah. If you're from Minnesota, that's how you get on. You
Oh,
making
now
that
see,
Oprah.
now I know. See, you're going too far, Negro. You're going too
All
far.
right, all right, all
You
right.
know, you're going too far. You know.
Man, either I want a New York New York #1 bestseller, or I want to get an Oprah. Those are my two goals in life doing this work.
Wow.
That's what I want. I want some clout. But again, I'm I'm joking
Wait,
around, but it
wait a
also
minute.
goes back to what we were talking about.
Oh,
But it goes back to what we were talking about. Is that's what ends up happening in our community. Is when we don't value one another, we try to one up one another. Just how you started, I think is a good
right.
place for us to end, because the two folks that I'm poking at and making fun of, I actually have good relationships with both of them. But it's like there are people in our community who are starting to grow hatred for those two individuals because of the success they have doing this work.
Yeah, yeah. And the other piece is it's interesting how we expect each other in our community to do our work perfectly.
Right. And it's not going to be like that.
It's not going to be like that because I think I know who you're talking about, and they haven't always been perfect. Let's be honest,
Sure.
right?
Sure. Right.
There's been a shade or two,
Mm-hmm.
in there, but nobody's perfect. Now think about if we had Martin Luther King around during this era. Oh my God.
Man, the memes would be wild on Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King he would I think he would have issues. I think he would have beef with people.
Or they
Um,
would definitely have beef with him.
that's what I mean. Like
Yeah.
there will be people targeting him within our own community,
Right.
and
Well, he
and
did, but he did. See, the difference is you didn't have YouTube, right?
mm,
You had newspapers, right?
okay,
And
yeah,
then as a community, we could blame those comments on the man, right?
sure,
You know,
sure,
even if they were true, we would blame it on the man,
mm-hmm.
right? You know, and some people said there was a beef manufactured between him and Malcolm X. Well, actually, some of that was very true, right?
Mm,
The thing is if we always want to look back on it. If we look back on it honestly, the FBI wouldn't have had to do a whole lot of stuff with
mm-hmm.
against them because it's been all on Facebook.
Yeah,
They just go on Facebook where
yeah,
it's like what this Negro nuts talking about
yeah,
non-violent, that kind of
yeah,
stuff. Because my daddy thought he was nuts. We don't
yeah,
talk about that. See, that's that whole thing about dealing with the trauma inside. Let's deal with. If you really want to heal, you got to deal with all of the truth.
right,
Or
right,
maybe I shouldn't say all, but the full truth, right? And that's why healing is so difficult. Because if you deal with the full truth, it is painful.
right,
Sometimes excruciating painful
mm,
in the short term.
right,
There was a whole lot of painful stuff I had to deal with me and my family in the short term that I didn't think was going to ever end when you're going through it and that kind of stuff. Because dealing with the family secrets, finding out certain things about you that ain't true,
right,
and you see how you hear these stories when you listen to people tell their stories, how when they found out the family secrets, like the dude that they thought was their daddy ain't their daddy, and how
that's
and
my story,
how they weren't able to make peace with
right,
that
mm-hmm.
destroyed it. We got to find ways to make peace with the pain. We got, because see, that's the thing when I talked about the Native American communities to a certain degree, is they admit that they've been traumatized. They admit that there's a whole lot of stuff going on, but they also are looking at ways, how do we, in spite of the horrific things that some of the folks in our community have done, how do we make peace and find places for them?
Right,
But you can't even come close to doing that if you cannot deal with the truth.
right,
Both sides of the truth. And again, if you've been continually attacked over 400 years, why is it you don't think that has had some internal effects on you in terms of how you deal with each other,
right,
how you deal with yourself? some of us done got to a point. If we ain't fighting, we ain't living.
Mm. Wow.
And it ain't and so that's no different than if you ain't gang banging, you ain't living. In my
Right.
book,
Right.
oh man, I think you're being a little bit overboard and a little, dramatic. No, I'm just, hey, I say dramatic things. Sometimes I gotta say dramatic things to get your attention. And I don't care if you don't agree. That's
Right.
fine. Let's talk about it. We don't have to fight about it.
Right.
I mean, because I don't fight. I told you that. But I ain't got no time for fighting with you. I walk away from him. But now, if you follow me, we got a problem.
Yeah.
Don't get it twisted. I have to tell my clients that all the time. Because they keep talking about you old, Mr. Simmons. Ooh, my arms look all look. You see how weird this is? Um, don't get it twisted. I'm old, but I'm wiry. Yeah. So
Yeah.
see now I lost my mind. See, the green screen that would came up on your
Messed you
screen.
up.
That green, it had it had an effect on me.
Yeah, it
Now,
freaked me
now,
out.
now
I
I'm
was like, what?
losing my mind. So how do we want to end this? Because we're over time.
Yeah, I think to wrap us up for today, I think at the end of the day, we really do have to do some deep healing work amongst ourselves. We have to value ourselves as Black people who are still in a system that doesn't treat Black folks well, and we have to acknowledge the anti-Blackness that we have accepted as a group of people. Because at the end of the day, when we see things like what we've been going through for 400 years, but definitely when it's being more broadcasted via social media, and we hear these stories of Black folks who are they're losing their lives, being brutalized and hurt, being mistreated. We have to give it the same amount of energy that we do when it's a non-Black person doing it to us. Otherwise, we're never going to collectively do the healing that we need to do because we don't value ourselves as a whole people. So those would be my closing words. Any final thoughts from you?
Well, I don't use the term anti-Blackness. I don't know why, but I don't. But the issue is maybe um, not believing that we deserve to heal.
Right.
We deserve to heal, but it's painful. I can understand why folks ain't trying to do it. But the thing is if we don't get a handle on this healing, how are we going to police ourselves? Because some of the
Bingo.
folks are, if we don't get a handle on this healing, how are we going to police ourselves?
Bingo.
So
Bingo.
y'all stay
Yeah.
safe. We'll be back next week.
Peace.